Seven board members present. And number 2A, adoption of the agenda. I would entertain a motion.
I would move for approval of the agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. That brings us to 3A, public comments. Casey, do we have any public comments?
We do not.
Just as a reminder, public comments will be allowed for a duration of 3 minutes per speaker to be timed by the board clerk, and speakers must sign up for in-person public comment by 1 p.m. the day of the board meeting. That brings us to item 4, consent agenda items. And I don't see my wording.
Got it?
Excuse me. Items listed on the consent agenda are considered by the Board of Education to be routine business items. Approval of the items may be made by a single motion, second majority vote, with no separate discussion of any item listed. Should a member of the board desire to discuss any item at his or her request, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. What are the wishes of the board?
I move to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please cast your vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Item 6A, extended school year ESY update.
Yes, Dr. Stephanie McNamara is here. She is, I'll still call her our new Director of Student Services. We love to catch a break from time to time by being new, so we'll still use it. She's here to summarize our extended school year program that wrapped up recently.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity, and it was so nice to see many of you at Convocation. To let you know, extended school year, that is a decision that is discussed at every single IEP meeting for all of our identified students. Each IEP team must consider that for every student, looking at the special education related services, whether it's academic behavioral related services, as well as a need, and the student must qualify. This is a process that is followed because it's law. So how does a student qualify for ESY services? We know that there is the nature and severity of a disability. So some of our students qualify because of those skills that they will lose after between the end of the school year and the beginning of the school year. If a student is going to regress in skills, they could qualify that way. Or if we are moving towards self-sufficiency and independence and we're getting to kind of like they're going to master it, and there we go, sorry. And you can find those all in our special ed process handbook at the state. So as a cooperative, we work with our coordinators as well as those teams to identify the planning. We look at the students who qualify so we can start identifying staff that needs to be there. We have constant communication within the district as well as with our parents. We work with our building principals as well as identifying the dates. They traditionally run the month of July. And we constantly communicate. So this year, We did one location at Riverside for all of our services. You see the breakdown of the staff that was hired for that. Staff are asked if they would like to participate as a teacher of ESY. So it's not a requirement, but there are some teachers who would like to do that. So they have that opportunity, and you can see the amount of staff that we had. We also had students that received related services. Okay, there we go. Looking at our numbers for this last year, you can see we had elementary as well as secondary students. You also see the average days overall that students attended. So those are pretty good numbers and pretty consistent with what we've seen in previous years as well. You also see the number of students that received those related services. So those are duplicated numbers. So of that 46 students, 11 of them would have received OT. So I think that is it. Any questions or clarifications that I can give you?
I know
our
that
te-
it's
Oh, sorry.
mandated, of course, but it's great to hear this and to know that our students are being so well served over the summer.
Yes, and the teachers worked very hard, and there was lots of communication. And I think having it at one location, we'll review that to see if that's what we need to continue to do. We do ask for feedback from our staff to see what do we need to do better next year to make it more easy, or fluid, I should say, maybe. Yep. Thank you.
I have a question. You may have
Yes, ma'am.
answered it, but of the note, how many students sort of qualified for this, and then what percentage actually took advantage of it? Just curious.
I will have to get back to you on that. That wasn't a number that I was looking for,
Yeah.
so.
You can count on me to always ask that one
But
question.
I
so-
want to, I would say the majority of students did take advantage of the opportunity, but I can circle back to that. You're welcome.
All right, thank you very much. That's going to bring us to item 7A, Annual Fire Inspection Agreement for 2025-2026.
Yeah, we have Corey Nicolette, our Director of Maintenance and Grounds, is handling this one.
Good evening. So this is my third year starting here with the Emporia Public Schools. The first year, we pretty much were running with whatever had been established because I was brand new, didn't know what we had, didn't have. At the end of that year, we found we had a lot of deficiencies in our inspections in the fire prevention world. So going into 2024, 2025, which would have been a year ago, we had several contractors all doing pieces of the fire prevention puzzle. One was a big chunk of it for the alarm systems. That alarm system also does the sprinklers and our, like the HVAC monitoring and all that stuff for fire. Because if a fire happens, the HVAC shuts down so you don't spread the fire. So all that's tied in. It's a really big piece of the puzzle. That part of the puzzle needs inspected 4 times a year. You have your annual inspection, your semi-annual inspection, and your quarterly inspections. So at that time, we only had a contract for the semi-annual inspection, so twice a year. So we were missing our quarterlies, and we were missing our annuals, which your annual can't be your semi-annual on that. So we went to that contractor and said, hey, do the rest of the inspections, but on a T&M. T&M is time and materials, so no contract. It's just strictly what they come out, what they do, what parts they use. They bill us directly dollar for what they did. Contracts are beneficial depending on which side you go on, but it's good for budgeting because you know what you're paying for and what you're getting. Time and materials is a little more of a wild card, but we wanted to do that to try to get caught up. We found that contractor did not do what we asked on that. In fact, the obligation for the contract was even in question as to what they actually did. With that said, we looked at some of the other people that were doing parts of our inspections because it was very patchwork, quilt, kind of different overlaps that we had and didn't have. And a lot of our stuff wasn't being done on time, if it was getting done. So we started kind of taking back, and we talked to those people throughout the year, say, hey, where we at, and it never seemed to get caught up. So about March of last year, we got written up a lot on the inspections from the fire marshal. Now, we got everything corrected in the time that we were allotted, so We're within all the regulations on that front, but from the inspection side and anything they didn't inspect, we still have this issue we wanted to solve. So we reached out to some of the partners we've been using. We got some quotes, we got some, different ideas, what we needed to have, what we didn't need to have, what we need to prioritize. And we found that we weren't even looking at a lot of the stuff that was required to be looked at. One example of that is the fire hydrants. We have, I think, over a dozen fire hydrants on our property. We're responsible for those, and they're required to have annual inspections. And I can't find any records of any inspections. So we have to assume they haven't been inspected. I know they haven't been inspected in the 2 years I've been here because they weren't on the list of the things that our contractors we were previously working with had been working on. So we found a few different options. Not very many companies had the capacity to come in and really get us to we're 100% caught up, know what we need to do, and get us on the right track. Cruise Corporation started working with the district during the bond. They got several of the big bond projects for HVAC. I was talking to him about one of our current HVAC projects at William Allen White, which they got that bond project also, and he said they had a fire division. We started talking to him, we found out that they actually have one of the more comprehensive fire divisions in the state for all the companies that do inspections. They've got some of the most qualified technicians. They send theirs to the higher advanced schools that some of the other ones don't. Kind of getting your basic inspections kind of low level, fairly easy to get. They really go out of their way to send them to the advanced stuff. Their people can actually do calibrations. Almost no companies that we've talked to can even look at it to see if it's calibrated, let alone fix the calibration when it's out of sync or where it needs to be. So Cruise started looking pretty good on that. We looked at a more comprehensive package for doing everything, and we came up with the package that I presented tonight. One of the huge benefits to them beyond their expertise, beyond the fact that we worked with them in the district, we know we have a good relationship with them. They've been working with us for years, is that they actually contract through Kansas Security for their alarm component of their fire monitoring service. That's who we already use. So Kansas Security already has all of our burglary alarms, flood alarms, panic alarms, fire alarms. Everything's already a package deal. So it didn't really make sense on some of these other companies that wanted to get us to go to them. They wanted, the monitoring was a huge portion, right? They want us to go to their monitoring. Well, to take that out and have two monitoring services didn't align very well. And then we started looking at the lack of capacity. Cruise started looking better and better. So when we're looking at Cruise, one of the big things that they have that's different is when they do their inspections, and I'm talking like their first primary, they're new to the district, really get us where we need to be. They have 2 HVAC technicians on site and 2 plumbers on site. So locally, there aren't very many plumbers that have the certification to deal with the fire sprinkler blowback valves. Cruise's plumbers are certified in that. The local company that we've had doing our regular blow-off valves are fine, but the fire valves are separate, have to be special certification. They don't have that locally. So we had to find somebody for that anyway. This covers that. Them having the HVAC technicians is huge because every fire damper that doesn't open when we want it to open back up, so we have hot rooms or cold rooms, those technicians, while on site on that initial big thing when they go through the building, if they can fix it with what's on the truck, we don't pay extra. They're already on site. We've already paid for them to be there. If they have to bring parts in, we will be for the parts, but we won't have the labor on that. If they have to come back, we would be on it for the labor, but we're not paying the diagnostic fee at that point. Usually when we have a problem, we have to call them out, they look at it, we get charged for the time to look at it, and then we come back and we look at the next, and then they fix it. So this takes care of at least half of all the visits we would need. And then the other thing is, while those plumbers are there, if they're standing around doing nothing, we can have, that's our time. We paid for that time. So if we have other plumbing problems, we can have them work on those plumbing problems while they're there. So, hope we don't have to utilize that much, but it's kind of a nice perk that we've already paid for. So with all that said, for the first year, and this year's much higher than it would be in future years, I'm hoping, $112,655, it's tips bid, which we've gone through the tips before. If there's questions on that, we can go through it again, but we've done it a few times here now. So that cost, again, includes getting us up to speed. They are going to put a book in every closet that has a fire riser. Right now, ours are all out of date because we haven't been doing those the way we should. They'll have a book for every office. My office will be supplied a book that'll represent every office, and then every fire riser will have its own book for that riser. So that way, whenever there's any inspections that are done, none of that stuff is even hard to find. It's all right there where we're already looking at the components instead of having to go try to figure that out later. So getting us up on the books. Kansas Security in this price is also going to go through and put hands on every single unit in every building. So we're going to make sure that, smoke detector 17 aligns with smoke detector 17 in the system. And then, as we go through this year and they get all that done, that should put us at a really good position a year from now where this is much less money because we already know everything we have. We don't have any big projects planned for adding more additions. We're through the bond as far as that goes. So now's a really good time to just get us up to 100%. So if there's any questions, I can take those.
So Corey, I know you talk very highly of them. Do they also have a lot of experience with schools specifically on that then?
I don't have a specific number on schools. I do know they have contracts in Emporia, that they've already been in Emporia several times.
Okay.
Michelin is one of them. So they are in town a lot, which is also another benefit that if we have a problem, they're not far away.
Okay.
This is just a 1 year.
Yeah, this is a
Right.
1 year because after that 1 year, the next year should look very different as far as what we need to be just for compliance sake.
Because I see the Kansas Avenues on there, and it's not very much in the grand scheme of things, but, if we sell it, I
That-
assume we're just out the 2947 for that one, probably.
Right, because
Okay.
legally right now we still have an obligation to
Right,
make sure
of
that
course,
it's
yeah.
good to go. So as
Okay.
soon as that's off there, we can make that adjustment.
Okay.
And the close on Kansas Avenue isn't scheduled until like July of '26, so.
Which is the end of this contract, so.
Going back to what you said about how like our last vendor didn't conduct, the inspections with fidelity, like how will that be? I mean, you explained the book and everything, but, how do we just make sure that that Cruise also does the job that we pay them to do?
So part of that's obviously on me for not knowing what it all was till we were in hindsight looking back and I was looking for the things. The thing with the issue at the time was even when we had caught it in time, getting them reactive was the problem. This goes back to Cruises has been doing a lot of work for us for a long time. We haven't had any problems with them reacting to us or being upfront about problems. So, I feel confident that a relationship that's historically been good is more likely to stay good than to have a problem when we have good history. And it's been years now. They initially started in 2019. They did the Walnut HVAC. So I don't know what happened before that, but at least since 2019, the school district and Cruises' relationship has been building, not going the other way.
Okay, this is an action item.
Okay, me again. Dr., this is a lot of money, obviously, and it's really important, so that's good. That's fine. But I'm also wondering if, as we consider more capital outlay projects, if perhaps we could see like a budget for like 3 to 5 years, so that, not now, like maybe in the next few months as you and Josh, get acclimated to our system. But I think if we could use that as a future agenda item, I think it would be helpful.
Definitely, and, and Corey's done a lot of work in trying to lay out capital expenditures and needs over the course of time, and now it's just a matter of us, we've got Josh on board, we're going to work with Corey to create a good long-term capital outlay plan that starts to pull the dollars in at the right years to get the actual projects accomplished. We're just playing a lot of catch-up right now with regard to, deferred maintenance and infrastructure. We could easily run another bond issue just to deal with deferred maintenance and infrastructure. So we have to create a long-range plan and address it as proactively as possible.
I move to approve the annual service agreement for fire prevention systems with Cruise Corporation through TIPS Purchasing Cooperative for 2025-2026 is submitted.
A second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 7B, student handbook changes for 2025-2026, second read.
Yep, Dr. Erica Mickelson is back to go through these second reads of the handbooks with you.
Okay, I'm back for student handbooks, and the reason we brought these back were based on the changes for the AI policy that we put into place. So you will see, we didn't need to update the elementary AI policy piece because really at the elementary level, it's introducing them to kind of, what's fake, what's out there. It's really just that high level, what is AI and what it can be used for. At the middle and high school, it is we are going to put steps in place to be utilizing those pieces for artificial intelligence. So you can see the misuse of the AI tools is in there under minor infractions. And then we did take the board policy, the full board policy, and put it into our handbooks because we thought that was a way to reiterate what that is and what that looks like for our parents and families.
Erica, I have one question.
Yeah.
Later on, we're going to be passing board policies, and one of the board policies is on hairstyles.
Yes.
That we might, and so if we pass that, I assume you'll go ahead and put that into
Yes,
the
we can,
handbooks.
absolutely. We can look at that
Okay.
after we approve it as well.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Yeah, and I had a question about that as well, because if I look at the high school policy, the dress code policy XIX, and then the EMS policy XVW, they're different. Like the language we added in EHS has not been put over into the same policy in EMS. Is there a reason for that?
No, at the end of the year, we have the middle school principal, and at the time it was John Martin, and working with Mr. Burns too for this year, and then Mr. Fisher, they pull those and they look at those, so it's whatever is specific to the buildings. But we can look at making sure they're more similar. I mean, obviously, we want the gap or the bridge from middle school to high school to be as seamless as we can. So while we're looking at the hair policy and what needs to be updated in that, we can pull the principles and look at that piece as well.
Okay. And I mean, it kind of all effectively says the same thing and gives
Yeah.
them the same
It's
amount of
just
control. I
different
just
wording.
noticed that it was different wording in
Yeah.
both manuals.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. I move to approve the student handbooks for the 2025-2026 school year as submitted.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Item 7C, 2025-2026 USD253 budget review.
Yeah, we get our new interim assistant superintendent of business operations and also our director of business. We got Josh Swartz and Kate. It's Josh's first time in front of the board since he's gotten here, so be kind. You always are.
Thank you, Dr. McGehee, and thank you for being here for this evening and serving for sure. The budget's always a key point of the year, but it's also a lot of details to it. So, and Kate has been extremely helpful as I've transitioned as well. But I think the very first day on the job, we went to Topeka with the budget and got it reviewed. So it was jumping right in, and this was going to be one of the bigger jobs of this year for this position for sure. So. First off, we do have a presentation that we modeled from last year, and just an overall picture. I think there were 6 or 7 documents in the packet, and so this one is really just going through the different pieces that are in this. But you've got an agenda. We wanted to make sure our budget tied to the mission and vision, and then those priorities that were there. And then we'll go through some of the other, there's some screenshots from the budget itself that we will review as a group, and then if there's questions, for sure, time to discuss. The main thing tonight isn't the approval of the budget, but this really approving what's going to be in the newspaper. that will get published and will get communicated out to the public. Other key thing is this is not approving how much will be spent, but it's more approving what the legal max would be. And there is a slide in here that compares what we've kind of done as a legal max in prior years compared to what we've spent, so you can kind of get a picture of the difference between the legal maximum that you have versus the actual expenditures, because they are different. So as we move forward, we have mission and vision. I guess we always keep those in front of us just as a focal point. Also tied in the 3 strategies and the priorities of the district. The 24-25 results really tie back to the needs assessment and making sure that some of the things that were put in place last year, kind of where we were at with those. And a lot of these are the same. I see capturing kids' hearts, which since I've been here, there's been training for that. A lot of other pieces that are strength builders to the strategies. And then also some pieces with operations. And there is several projects in current phase to get implemented, and those will kind of continue as well this year. And then also wanted to make sure we talked about the needs assessments. So there is a portion of the budget when it does get approved that we talk about that the needs assessment was a portion of that conversation when the budget was created. And principals had gone through and worked on that last spring. And I believe there was a presentation to the board in March, possibly March or April. So really took some of those key pieces from those presentations and summarized them with this slide. So ELL support, Tier 2 and Tier 3 learning, so a lot of those interventions for those students that need the support. And then professional development on some of those same practices with curriculum, behavior, and letters. And then chronic absenteeism and just the overall concept of improving attendance was a common factor. And then operations, which goes back to, Corey's left already, but really goes back to some of those capital plans. And I know HVAC pieces are a part of that. Roof repairs and playground maintenance are several that are on the high end of the radar. And then we get into some of the actual numbers that are in that budget. So this was a slide that came from one of those bigger packets, and it's kind of difficult to see, but you'll see columns that say budget versus actual, and then you get to this year where it just says budget because we are proposing those legal maxes. Gives you an opportunity to see the difference between what's budgeted versus what the actuals are. And over the course of time, it looks like if you look at the total expenditures row that's in red, kind of that first row in red, it's about a $20 million difference between what the budget is on that legal max compared to what those actual expenditures are. And there will be an increase in expenditures because there's been some changes in salaries and some pieces like that that will cause the 25-26 year to go up. But it also, somebody asked the question, it looks like you're spending $20 million more this year. Well, that's the legal max. That's not going to be what the actuals will end up being based on patterns like that. Thought I'd just stop for questions. Questions so far on this slide before we keep moving?
Yeah, I just have one question. So for student support services and instructional support services, it looks like we, over the past few years, have been pretty significantly under budget on those. Can you speak a little bit more about that? I know you were not here during those years. Yeah. So it's okay if you don't know tonight. I'm just kind of wondering why that's happening and how we can best invest our dollars to support our students.
The one thing you're looking at there too is even when we look at the totals and we say we're talking about approving legal maxes, the maximum amounts we can spend versus actual budget, that's all of these lines are legal max, they're a part of that legal max. So they're going to be inflated as we approve those legal maxes now than what's actually spent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get that. I think that my train of thought is on other lines, like for example, operations and maintenance. We have spent more money than what we have anticipated, and I personally would like to see our dollars spent. I know that operations and maintenance affect students in a longer term, but in our classrooms.
Mm-hmm. So really look at the actuals. When we start looking at how, the budget's one thing, but then as the year ends, focusing on how those actuals end up, trying to get as many in that instructional piece as possible. Is that how? Okay.
But I understand what you're saying too, is, I mean, we spend a significant amount of capital outlay on projects. And I've communicated with the board previously, we're not going to be able to expend that aggressively in capital outlay in the future. We had some decent balances and reserves from year to year there. Corey's done a great job of catching things up, but at an expense, at a cost. And that's what you're seeing reflected there in the last couple of years. Sorry, I don't mean to step in, but
That's okay.
I was here 2 years ago doing that job too, so we were kind of in that mode at that point.
I think the other thing to keep in mind is also when you're trying to staff and you're trying to fill the positions that are there, the positions that are in the classroom directly working with the kids are the priority when you're having trouble filling positions.
As we pause here, there's a question that's come up earlier when we did agenda review, and it's on other costs. You can see like a $462 number, then it jumps to $48,000. During the 23-24 year, there was a transfer now those are childcare meals. So in 23-24, that was transferred to ESSER to use ESSER funds to pay for that, which then shrunk that to a much smaller number. And then last year, without the ESSER funding, that all stayed in that other cost. So that's where that gap was. Any other questions on this one? Okay. Budget at a glance, from a picture standpoint, gives you just some bar graphs with that. I don't know if it's any questions on this one. It's kind of the same information, but it's just in a different format. And then the next slides get into kind of the proposed notice of hearing. The reason why we have this up here is really this is what's going to be in the newspaper, so it gives you a visual what's in the paper. The total mills is usually a question that comes up from anyone. What's the mill rate? Which would be in the bottom right, the bottom row. I think it's hard for me to read that from here.
56.72.
Yeah, and you can kind of see the other mill rates that will be there. I would say this is a larger mill rate than there has been from a proposal standpoint. And a portion of that is to maintain the local option budget, which is from a state, this kind of goes into the state aid portion of how the funding mechanism works. Emporia receives 61% of every dollar in extra aid if money is maximized in supplemental general. So part of that is to keep that fund as large as possible. And there are some other adjustments made from bond and interest, even using some of the leftover construction funds there to help minimize that increase. If there was not a construction fund, that mill rate would have been higher yet even. So, but that is why that's a little bit larger to maintain some of those. I would call deferred maintenance as one of the primary focuses of trying to keep some things moving forward. Any questions on any of these?
I have a question, just to make sure I understand the numbers right in mills, because it's very complicated. It's not my field. That's why we pay you. So if I'm reading this right, 55.48 from 23 to 24, 54.49, 24 to 25, and next budget cycle would be 56.72. So is it accurate to say that we're increasing the mill?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, 1.3 cents or 1.3 mils? Okay, okay. Okay.
Okay. All right. Keep us moving here. Form 150, really this is what the funding mechanism is using from all the weightings that you'll hear about weighting. So Form 150 is really the weighting sheet that takes the base enrollment plus at-risk and all those other pieces that become kind of the major budget. I would say Form 150 is a form that you need to know the name of at least. So if somebody asks, what is this? It includes all the weightings that drive the legal max for your general fund. And we could spend a lot of time in this, but I think it's more just recognize what it is. If you have questions, would entertain those for sure if you have questions. Otherwise, it's more of an information piece. Questions on this one? Mill rates, we've been somewhat talked about this with the Code 99, what was going to be in the newspaper. I think one piece, and it might come up later with the revenue neutral rate, there is a recommendation to go above the revenue neutral rate, primarily because there's a 20 mil statutory rule that every district has to levy a 20 mil tax. I believe the revenue neutral rate for employees like 18.5 mils, somewhere in that range. So automatically, the district would be above that 20. But again, any questions on any of, this just takes that mill rate piece and breaks it out a little bit more clearly. Okay. And then cash balances is from a finance end, I have used this as a kind of a barometer check or a health check to see how our cash balances are looking at the end of each fiscal year. We monitor the budgets throughout each month of the year. However, at the very end is where you really see, are we staying pretty steady? Is it going up? Is it going down? Those kind of things. There is the one to note, it would be special ed. It says special education co-op. This is one to note. And you'll see in July of 20, I think it goes 23, 24, 25, correct? Mm-hmm. So there's over $1 million in 23, then it drops to near 200,000 possibly. Yeah, 200,000, and then we're zero this year. We did find that there was a difference in what that special ed co-op was assessing compared to what was being collected through the assessments. And that gap is what was eating into those balances. So that has since been corrected. The assessments that are being billed to the member districts of the cooperative are now accurate, and we'll start to build that balance back up. But that is why that shrunk the way that it did. But overall, looking at any other cash balances, what questions might you have on this one?
I would like to talk about the at-risk education fund just a moment, because we see that continually increases, which is beneficial, but we're having a really hard time spending that because of restrictions. Is that correct?
That's
on
correct.
what that can actually be spent on?
Well, and there's also mandatory transfers. So there's so many dollars of the budget that have to be transferred into that fund, which is based on that 61% aid that I just mentioned for supplemental general. That also drives that percent of money that needs to be transferred into at-risk. Well, then at-risk has fairly narrow restrictions on how that could be spent, which then connects operations and finance with the teaching and learning department to see how those worlds can work together to maximize that, or really try to use that money. It is a challenge, and every year, if I've noticed, it's growing by $1.5 million or $2 million a year. So we need to get, for sure, first step would be to get that $2 million climb to stop, at least start to get that part remedied, and then start working on how to use those funds in a way to benefit at-risk learners. Trying to think, how familiar is the group with at-risk definitions and how that money's used? Is that something I should come back with, or does everybody feel pretty comfortable?
It's always worth a public discussion.
Okay, all right, so that could be possibly a follow-up that would have to do with that risk. Okay?
A lot of districts will use those at-risk funds to, you can use them to lower class sizes. And, with our enrollment not growing, it's going the other direction. We don't have that option. But, as we look at our budget and try to, we need to try to structure ourselves so that we can utilize all funds that we're receiving. And so that's a part of the work we're going to be doing, as we look at how do we cost contain within our budget in areas where we can't really afford to be spending what we're spending, and utilize funds like this to, not to say that it would happen, but let's say that we got on this edge of, do we need to put another teacher in a section, in a grade level, or not to create another section? Well, if we hire another teacher, then that's coming out of the general revenue. You can't utilize it. You're not going to utilize these at-risk funds for it because our class sizes are already to a point where they wouldn't let us utilize them that way. But maybe you hold on and hire a second person in the classroom, a support specialist or something like that to aid in making sure that we can manage the classroom, teach in the small groups, so on, break the kids up into smaller groups. So we got to figure out what's the best way to approach our numbers, so that we're supporting our teachers, keeping our class sizes where we want them, and then also being able to utilize these dollars in areas that maybe it makes sense to put a second person in versus splitting kids up into another section. So these are just all conversations we're going to have and potentially ways to begin to expend the funds that we're receiving that we haven't been able to spend them down up to this point. We have needs. We just have to be creative to be able to utilize all of our revenues.
I love everything you just said, Dr. McGehee. Thank you.
Oh, I might have to zoom back out. I think the next couple pieces talk about the revenue neutral rate, which is, so there are two action items for this evening. One is to approve what would be in the paper for the revenue neutral rate, and then the other is the Code 99 or the budget that would be published. So questions on the R&R piece that's there? All right, and then, the final slide was just the date that it was going to be in the newspaper. This would be published to the website, and then the hearing would be on September 10th at 5:45. I believe there's two hearings that night. There would be one for the revenue neutral rate, where you take action on that, and then there's a hearing for just the budget if the public is there for that, but then that budget is actually approved in the meeting. And then for 26, 27, we've talked about this a bit, just really trying to plan and implement, look at what we can do to maximize the dollars we have, take care of kids, those kind of things. So, overall questions or thoughts?
I do have a question. I think
Okay.
you could see that I had a confused expression on my face when we looked at budget at a glance, so going sort of to slide 7. So on the other cost, you said that the $48,000 was for childcare meals, and I'm curious if we are participating in the CACFP for reimbursement for childcare meals.
At the current time, we're not.
Can you elaborate maybe why we're not, and do we have intentions to do so? Because that's a pretty good
We
reimbursement
do
rate.
have, Samantha and I talked today on ways to look into that, but it's just starting now. There would be ways to get funding back on that, for sure, and trying to navigate that to maximize those dollars, for sure.
Jamie, can you explain more about what that is?
So just like when we have our school meals and we can get reimbursed for like free and reduced meals, even our full price meals, we get a small reimbursement for those as well. You can also do that for child and adult care programs, also funded through basically KSDE, and so it's a nice reimbursement. I hope we pursue it.
I had a question. When we're looking at projected numbers of students and so forth, and then what we can do for reimbursement and so forth, but if we have a decline in enrollment, is it that we can use the highest enrollment for the last 2 years or 3 years, or?
The rule has changed. It used to be you would do an average of 3 years,
Okay.
the higher the last 2 possibly, but it's gone to where it's just last year's enrollment or the current year.
That is correct.
So, based on predictions right now, our current year enrollment will drop compared to the 24-25 year. So whatever we have in 24-25 will be the number we would use in our budget. That fair to say, Kate?
So that's been tightened. I mean, you don't have as many options.
We don't have as many options, correct.
Okay.
Or if you have a fluctuating enrollment, it's a little more volatile than it would have been when there's averages.
Okay.
Good question.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
That's going to bring us to item 7D, approval of the notice of hearing to exceed the revenue neutral rate for 2025-2026.
I move to approve the notice of hearing to exceed the revenue neutral rate for the 2025-2026 school year for publication in the Emporia Gazette on August 22nd, 2025, and on the USD253 website as submitted.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. That brings us to 7E, approval of the notice of hearing for the 2025-2026 budget.
Are you ready? I move to approve the publication of the notice of hearing for the 2025-2026 USD 253 budget in the Emporia Gazette on August 22nd, 2025, and on the USD 253 website as submitted.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to item 8A, board reports. And we have Flint Hills Technical College Board of Trustees.
We met on Monday, so similar to last year. For this board meeting, it was their first day of class, so I felt a little sorry for them for having to have a board meeting on the first day of class. But it was a good meeting. We got a nice highlight on student services and academic affairs, and approved the course catalog. We also, I agreed to serve on an insurance broker committee, so similar to what we did here. They're looking at IMA and Bukati, and I think they'll probably end up with some good choices to help make insurance more affordable at the tech college. It was a good meeting.
Thank you. And Emporia Recreation Commission.
Right, so the Rec Commission had a special meeting recently where we voted to approve the MOU for aftercare for Rec Extra that we're going to visit about today. So I'm just going to kind of leave it at that and expound a little bit. There were some inquiries by some of our Rec Commissioners about we have certain staff that work full-time for the rec that would be supervising and engaging in certain duties related to supervising the staff that take care of Rec Extra, right? And so technically those overhead costs are not part of the agreement that 253 and the rec has there. So there was some discussion amongst the Rec Commission commissioners about, hey, this was a surprise expense, kind of had to throw all this together at the last minute, but maybe next year it would be fair for the rec to talk to USD 253 about covering those additional administrative costs our full-time staff have to do, which seemed pretty reasonable, but just wanted to put that out there. Not an issue for now, but they may request that. We may request that later as we move forward.
All right, thank you.
Oh, and our next regular meeting is the 20th. It's a Wednesday, not a Monday this time, so don't show up at the wrong time. That's mostly a reminder for me because I've done this before.
Okay, item 8B, Board Policy Update, June 2025, KSB, second reading.
Dr. Erica Mickelson is back with a second read on a policy. We had some several policies, but one specifically we had some conversations about last time.
So the main one was visitors to the school, and this had to do with to make sure that we are in accordance with Kansas law. We did reach out to our district lawyer, our attorney, and did receive feedback. So you'll see that in the notes there as well, as an added piece, making sure that we are, as I said, sticking to that the Kansas state statute. I think we have all had a lot of discussion of how uncomfortable it could be to have that as something when visitors are coming in and they are carrying, because we are obviously a gun-free zone in our school district. But if we have an off-duty police officer or an off-duty law enforcement, they are able to come into our buildings. Obviously, we would want to ensure that we are doing everything that we need to as far as they're signing in, they're doing what everyone else in the building would do as they come and visit. But we're not having them say that they are off duty. We're not having them announce. We're not having them wear anything. It very much is if they come in, they don't have to let us know that piece. So any questions?
I thought the clarifying language was good. I felt like it just got us all on the same page.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm understanding this. Yeah, so the principal or designee has the authority to request that if you're coming in there, you'll be able to show that, hey, I am law enforcement, I can carry this. But we're
Yes.
just not making them wear a scarlet letter.
Correct.
And I think that
Yes.
was the confusion last time was,
Yeah.
is anyone knowing that this person is coming in concealing and carrying for whatever purpose, right?
Yes,
And so
yep.
the way I read that is that, yes, they would be required to say, hey, I've got this, but we're just not announcing it because it's concealed.
Correct, and that would be for if you have retired law enforcement, you have the LEOSA piece with the Law Enforcement Officer Safety Act for retired officers, so that would include that piece as well.
Right, or just cop picking up their kid and being in the building. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, thank you for all of your extra work on this. I really appreciate it. And I think for me, the biggest thing was just presenting identification
Yes.
to, to the principal or the designee. That was the most important thing to me. So I'm
Yeah.
glad we have that clarified.
I'll take one for the team. I move to retire policies BBC, CN, DFE, IB, JBC, JGFGB, JH, KBC, KGB, KM, KN, JCDB, and GBO, and to approve the new and revised policies BBC, CN, DFE, GAABC, IB, JBC, JBCD, JGFGB, JH, KBC, KGB, KM, KN, JCDB, and GBO as submitted.
Can you say that one more time? Second.
Can I say, as a former kindergarten teacher, I don't know why that makes me happy, but it does. I don't know why, it just does.
I just think it's funny that Leslie got to say KGB at a meeting.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Item 9A, after-school care agreement, Emporia Rec Commission.
Yeah, I'll take that one. We really should be applauding right now because this was something that needed to get done. It needed to get done for our community. And thankfully, we were able to, find our way toward even having a former partner help us to pay and subsidize so that our families don't have to, pay the full boat on this after-school care. Just reiterating that if you'll remember, Boys and Girls Club was going to increase their monthly fees to $80. Working with Amanda at the rec center, we were able to keep that number down to $70. And then if a student can provide them with their record that they are eligible for a reduced lunch, that drops to $50. And if they're eligible for free lunch, that drops to $30. So we're just trying to make it as affordable as possible in a manner in which we can afford our portion to subsidize too. I appreciate Jeremy's comments as well with regard to the fact that they're subsidizing the program too through some administrative oversight and costs. We are helping to fund a part-time coordinator for the program, but just like I compare it to like we do with the Flint Hills Special Education Co-op, where we bill some of our financial personnel's time and so on to the co-op. I feel like that's exactly what Jeremy's talking about, and it's definitely, worthy of a conversation as we move forward. I think those are great conversations to have, and they're easier to have after we all kind of see a year under our belt and know that we feel like we've got a good model that we're projecting expenditures and revenues, as accurately as possible. But you will notice on the back of this document, I took the liberty to have our Vice President, Leslie Seeley, as the signee on it. Since we have Amanda Gutierrez as a signee for the Emporia Rec Commission, hopefully no one cares that was done. I don't know that I asked anyone's permission. Just kind of went that route. But we are strongly and wholeheartedly recommending your approval of this agreement.
Yeah, and I really would just applaud the rec center staff because we kind of just threw ourselves at their mercy, and when they've just pulled it together and really did a lot of work on it. It has been one of my greatest joys as a school board member to be able to serve on the rec commission because we truly have some incredible staff who really care about our community and families. And when we've needed them to, save our bacon, they have showed up maybe more than once at this point. So with that said, if there's any questions, I move to approve the after-school care agreement between USD253 and the Emporia Recreation Commission for the 2025 to 26 school year as submitted.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, and also I will be abstaining from this vote.
Motion passes 6-1.
And could I just say thank you to Dr. McGehee for all of your work on this? Like, you had to deal with this, like, even before you were hired on July 1st. So thank you for all of your work.
Thanks. Well, I appreciate that, and I would be remiss if I didn't say that Dr. Harder worked right up till the very last day and the very last hour on this as well with me, so we appreciate her work.
Thank you. So that brings us to item 9B, Superintendent Report.
Yeah, a few items here. A little report on convocation. I shared I'm in the process of sharing a reflections document with you in your regular Friday communication. I wanted to thank Mr. Glenn Woolard and our band students. I think that just adds, we need to involve students, when we start school every year. And my goal is to, if you look through the comments and there's one of them on there that says we need to involve students more, that's my comment on the reflections. So we'll try to look for more opportunities to involve students in convocation. But staff feedback has been very positive. I think they liked our speaker. It wasn't necessarily as rah-rah as it had been in the past, but there were actually a lot of positive comments about that. A thoughtful message, really respecting them and their role in the lives of others. And so we appreciate that. And, I guess we should all just repeat that we know this is going to be the best school year ever. As a part of, we shared some of that feedback with Ron today. He was real appreciative. Middle school track and field project update. This project was approved by the board earlier this year, and we've had a lot of really good progress recently with turf field installation. We've got some pictures further down in this report, and that's been going on all this week. Should wrap up. If it doesn't wrap up this week, it will very, very soon after. Our contractor on the project kept reaching out to us about delays due to a lot of permitting processes. I appreciate yesterday, Mr. Swartz went over and accompanied the contractor to a meeting with the city of Emporia, and we were able to see some movement on those, but certainly we would love to continue to work on our relationship with the planning and development side of the city to determine, what things we can do with them to ensure that we're doing things that are safe and healthy and doing them the right way, but being able to do them, as efficiently as possible as well. So we run into a few delays with regard to permitting and engineered stamp drawing requirements, things like that, that do drive the cost of our project up some. But I'm not going to get in the city's lane. They have their processes. We just need to use this to spark conversation about how we work together moving forward. There was a delay in the actual asphalt portion of the track surface because that asphalt has to go down first before the actual track material goes on. The asphalt plant broke down at the time that the crew was on site ready to lay asphalt, so they had to pull off our site, but they're now coming back to get that going again, but that did delay us a little bit. Parking lot works, waiting on some permitting. We're still dealing with some conversations related to lighting and landscaping associated with the whole project and around the parking lot as well. So continue to work with the city on those permitting issues. And then the concessions and restroom building, some more permitting that's required there. So we're waiting on some drawings there to meet the city's expectation, but they did, as a result of the meeting that Josh and did Corey go over? Corey was over there too. Josh and Corey went over to that meeting. We were able to get them to move on letting us start pouring the footings while we're still waiting on the full permit for that structure. So making some progress.
Dr. McGehee, can I ask, does the middle school have a plan for the soccer and football season that will start next week?
I'm sure they have a plan, but I haven't
okay.
had an opportunity to talk with them about it. But I can follow up on that to let you know that I promise they're going to be somewhere doing their thing. And then we included some of those pictures in there for you as well. First day of school's Wednesday, August 20th. And just a reminder, we've all signed up to try to go out and help greet students on that first day. And if you forget where you've signed up, Casey has a nice document she can share that tells you where everybody's going to be, or she can just tell you where you're supposed to be. That's kind of the way I run my life in this school district. Is Casey just tells me where I'm supposed to be next, and I show up there and do my thing. School bus inspections, our Director of Transportation, Michelle Charbonneau, reported that 100% of our buses passed the Highway Patrol inspection. You know, that's no small feat, so we appreciate them, all the hard work that they do. I know being fully staffed out there helps a lot too with regard to mechanical issues, and yeah, so we love our transportation group. They do great work. And then I just wanted to put in here as a follow-up, because you may have seen the agenda got revised a little bit from when it was first posted last week to what we were seeing today, and that was that job description related to our security guards. And this was it was a result of a conversation that came out of transition. And so as we were transitioning, administration was sharing with those of us coming in that there had been communication ongoing, and that we were not going to be covered if we had some sort of incident with a firearm associated with our employees that we employ to be armed guards. And so we were moving down that route because the policy language, I had read it, I was reading it over and over and over. It was pretty ambiguous. And so, it was almost like you got to where there was an exclusion, but then if you really read it the way it's intended, our armed security guards are excluded from the exclusion. It's kind of that, it gets that muddy. And so as we dug into it today, we just got our carrier on the phone this morning and got a positive, this is the way it is, they are covered, as long as we identify that we have them and that we employ them in our census that we do for our coverage. And it's not a large extra expense. That might be a question that comes up. She said it's around a $600 expense to include them. And so my apologies for this ever reaching your agenda initially, but appreciate those of us that were questioning it, and then even those members of the public that had questions about it, because it helps us to get the decision right at the end of the day. That's what this whole process should look like. And I just wanted to be sure that everyone was we all are aware of what happened, but not always is everybody out there aware. And so now everyone kind of knows how we process that. And I did communicate with, I know you were receiving some communications, and I did communicate back with the individual that was sending you some, and got a really nice positive message back from that individual too, appreciating the thought that we put into it. And of course we landed where they wanted us to, so they were happy. but we did it because that's where we should be. If we're covered, it does us a lot more good to have an armed security guard that may be closer to an incident than a law enforcement officer, than it does to have an unarmed security guard that might help us keep an eye on things, but can't really do any more than a teacher or a building principal or anyone else in the heat of the moment. And so we'll continue to work on this. I did reference that we've had some early conversations with the city about potentially going to SROs, but we're going to keep talking about that internally to decide, what's the best route to go. That's not a decision that's been made, or even a path that we're absolutely sure we're going down. But at some point could become necessary if we can't find qualified folks, as some of our folks retire. We want to be sure that the people that we do have carrying a firearm with these responsibilities, are trained appropriately. They've passed the psychology tests and everything else to be sure that they're someone that we want carrying that gun and dealing with those issues if they arise. So rambled on a little bit about that, but something that needed to be shared so that everyone understands kind of how it was processed.
Yeah, thank you very much. That brings us to item 9C, DJFAB, Administrative Leeway EMS Exposed Wiring Repair.
Yeah, this is an expenditure that was an emergency that we had to take care of due to a lightning strike and some exposed wiring and damaged equipment. And so the repair was made immediately, but it's over that $20,000 threshold. And so we enact the administrative leeway policy and ask you to come around and approve it after the fact.
So I had a question on that, but was the total cost of that too low for filing insurance type thing?
I don't know that we've checked on whether we file. I mean, we can or cannot file it. We should. I don't know if because it's a lightning strike. Not sure what our coverage is, but that's a part of a process. We need to look.
Okay.
We need to
Yeah.
go down that route and just see what we can recover.
Okay, and I have no idea, but I think it's worth at least checking it out,
Yep.
pursuing it. So.
I agree, Grant.
I had
We
the same-
have to
I had
pay
the
it,
same
but
thought.
If we can get insurance, heck yeah.
Sorry.
I mean, that's what we pay for, right?
Yep.
A lot of money for.
Yep.
So with that, unless anybody has anything else, I move to approve the invoice from Gerald Schuman Electric, Inc. as submitted.
A second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, thank you very much. Future board calendar dates, item 10A, Wednesday, August 27th will be our next board meeting. And then Wednesday, September 10th, we'll have our revenue neutral rate hearing at 5:45 and then our budget hearing at 5:50 PM. And at 6 PM, we'll have our regular board meeting. And then September 24th will be our Wednesday board meeting at 6 PM. And I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote.